welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
Q, I just moved over the weekend. I'm in a new recording location, so anything can happen. I could sound entirely different. Everything is kind of up in the air. Maybe this new recording environment is going to do wonders for the sound. Maybe it's going to sound a whole lot worse. Like, this is my first recording in the new place. It's exciting.
Have you gone as far as to put up any sort of sound dampening panels around your setup?
No, I've not done that. I don't think I really need to do that.
Yeah.
I always hear like professional podcasters and people that record YouTube videos, like they'll have those full studio setups or they'll go like record in the closet.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I've never gone to that length before, and I don't think it's necessary. I think my audio sounds all right.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, anytime I hear you, even now in real time, and of course you have a little extra tilt you do in the mix, but it always sounded good to me. I also I think the reason why I ask is I've got, at one point, maybe towards the beginning of us starting the show, I got a couple of these little sound absorbing panels, and I've put them up just because my desk is in a corner, and I'm worried that touching two walls, that one of them is going to catch some sound, but I think it's illogical. I'm probably way in the clear.
All right. I do have one of those microphone arms that is supposed to kind of protect from any jiggling of the desk causing any feedback into the microphone and stuff like that. So
you've got a shock absorber for the microphone. Yes.
Yeah, right.
I love it.
Anyways, that's our recording setups. Maybe we'll post pictures at some point. But yeah, my microphone arm is now on the other side of my desk. And so I'm just kind of getting used to swinging it around the other way. And it's the little things you get used to after a while. It just feels different to change.
Yeah, that would mess me up for sure for at least a couple of weeks. And then it'd be muscle memory again.
Let's go and get started with the show and some video game pitches. You're going first this week. What are you bringing us?
Okay, my ambitious but low confidence pitch this week is I'm thinking about a game where we, the player, are taking on the role of a data courier. I know I pitched a Johnny Mnemonic game recently. This is a little bit different in it that maybe it's an open-ish world. Maybe it's a little bit more linear, but the general idea is you are going to talking to people, getting quests to obtain data. Maybe it's cyberpunk, maybe it isn't, some piece of information, but the resource that you're gathering is draining or waning. In the case of data, it's corrupting on your way back. So as you kind of make your way to the location, you're kind of setting yourself up for needing to plan back the most efficient, optimal route on your way back in order to lose the least amount of data possible. And maybe that's time-based. Maybe it's there's kind of jostling mechanics or that sort of thing. I like the idea of, as you kind of deliver this data to people in the world, that different plot points or different sorts of things are revealed to you.
Very interesting. Going and starting the clock. Last week we spoke about SteamWorld Dig. And one of the things that makes that game and that series really, probably in particular the first game of the two, stand out to me is that it has a very interesting, you are primarily kind of drilling down into the ground, mining, it's kind of a block based, it's kind of like dig dug in that you're drilling down into the ground and removing these blocks of dirt and rock. After a while, your pockets fill up with minerals and stuff like that, and you have to return to the surface by pretty standard platformer-y controls, jumping back up the route that you made. And so on your way down, you have to kind of keep in mind what type of route you're setting for yourself on the way back up.
Yeah, you literally get to live with your own choices. Hopefully they weren't made in haste.
So it's a really interesting mechanic because you have to think about not only what is the most advantageous route for you on the way down to collect the most minerals. Sometimes you're put under a kind of time pressure as maybe enemies are closing in on you and you just want to, get out of their way, and you end up building kind of pitfalls or something that is going to be really difficult to platform up. I don't know if you can ever get yourself to a unwinnable state of being completely trapped down below. But it's an interesting mechanic. I mean, Minecraft is kind of similar. You have to kind of think about your entrance and exit to the mine. And of course, if your pickaxe ever breaks down in the mines and you don't have the materials to build another, then, you really have to follow your original route back up, or you might be stuck down there. So I do like this idea of having to kind of retrace steps or something like that, or maybe shortcuts that you take on your way to an objective, costing you on the way back. But the idea of kind of translating that into data is interesting. I wonder if there's a way to represent the data that's being lost and maybe be able to fill it with like parity data or similar enough data from your environment. Like if there's kind of like almost like a Mad Lib, like if you lost a verb from your data, if you lost a noun from your data, if you lost something very specific, then you can look around your environment and maybe take a snapshot of something around you, and then that will fill its place. And then as you get back, you can see whether or not your data still kind of holds together. I
was trying to think, I kind of had this moment in my head. I was like, am I just writing down Death Stranding right now? Yeah, I think that data angle could be, or as a Star Trek TNG fan, I guess I would say data. That data angle is interesting to me. And maybe there's a mechanic where you first, like as you pick up the data or before you pick up the data, you can kind of read it. You can see it in some way, view it as pieces of it get corrupted. Like, and maybe the blocks that are corrupted are seemingly at random. There are all these little short stories, and as you deliver to someone, the pieces that are missing because of maybe some poor platforming or some missed jumps or that sort of thing, the person just kind of asks you like, well, do you remember what that part was about? And you kind of have to go through a dialogue sequence of trying your best to remember or piece together what the story was.
That's interesting. I don't really like when games do that because it's
if they don't tell you,
it feels
you
like
have
a
to
real
remember.
disconnect between the player and the character. The character is being put on the spot by somebody else within the game world, asking if they remember something, whereas the player has access to screenshots and notes they would have taken. Like it just,
Right.
If there is like a real mental task that the player has to perform, like it feels better when we're really kind of on step with the character. It doesn't create this kind of false separation.
What if the mechanic was less about like rote memorization and a little bit more like the more jumps you take or the longer the journey? I don't necessarily want to make it based off length, but rather some sort of skill-based mechanic in platforming. Every hard landing fragments the data in some way, and then you have to kind of make sure it gets put back together before, or in the proper order before you make the delivery. And so you run into a scenario where you could, between every single, if you want to play very cautious, between every single like mini platforming challenge or sort of navigation challenge, you're like, okay, well, before I do this, I'm going to go in and rearrange everything and make sure it's in the right order so it doesn't fragment too bad when I, attempt this.
Yeah. And then as you have, characters or like, I don't know, police units, security units chasing after you, then of course, that's a nice way to kind of quantify bullet damage and stuff like that. Like that feels like a elegant system to represent health in the way that is kind of the standard, you die and have to start over again.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of if you kind of go through something too hastily that you find yourself really having to piece together a real mess.
And maybe there's objects within the environment, magnets and security, metal detectors, stuff like that, that will scramble data. And you have to kind of avoid, I've been playing a bit of Watch Dogs Legion, and as you're trying to escape from the cops, there are occasionally kind of checkpoints that are set up along the road. And if you go through those, then it'll detect that, you're a wanted person. Then, the cops will become aware of where you are if you're in the process of escaping them, Grand Theft Auto style. And so it's kind of another interesting challenge of like, you're going down a road, you're trying to find a place to hide, but the road that you're on has one of those, it's kind of a holographic blocker. So it's not a wall. You can still drive through it at full speed. And sometimes doing that is the best way to escape people behind you. But it's also kind of a information, like it resets the cooldown in a way. And so, interesting choices there. Do I go for it and retain my momentum, or do I try to evade, all detection, try to keep the cooldown as low as possible, and just try to find a place to hide, maybe double back my steps with risk of the police that are behind me catching me, or quickly swerve down an alleyway, not knowing how easy it's going to be to navigate. Yeah, it's kind of it's more interesting than just like a solid wall.
Yeah, and as you kind of look through the environment or the path back, you could have the player make those choices of like, look, you could walk casually through this gateway checkpoint thing, but that will just do a certain amount of damage to the information, or you could potentially take no damage, but take a more difficult route.
Yeah, that's right. So there would be presumably a timing mechanic as well, or would this be more of a meditative, get there whenever you feel like it, Death Stranding type of experience?
I'm trying to think about would there be one last twist about the data? Is it a slidey puzzle? Is it a jigsaw puzzle? Is it I always remember, this is a weird thing, but I do remember being like a little kid and doing the defragment on old Windows 95, 98 computers. Did you do this when you were?
Yeah.
I would watch it.
It's weird that it doesn't really exist anymore.
Right. Did computers stop getting fragmented? Did they figure that out, or are they doing it and I don't have any recourse? Yeah, it must, right. It would make sense that it would just do it in the background at 2 a.m., right? But yeah, in that scenario, I wonder if there's I always imagined that as a type of Tetris game or something in my head, as blocks of data were rearranged and stacked neatly. I loved the idea that every bit and byte had its place. Or
you can run a Wilmot's Warehouse type of setup or a Tetris type of setup using the other thumbstick or something. So, no pressure if you don't want to engage with it, but the more tightly packed relevant data is with one another, the better it's going to stay together. And so as you're doing your platforming, then, you can prepare for the worst by doing better at this puzzle game, or you can leave it to chance and try to take safer routes back.
That's cool. You can kind of reinforce it with your own logistics skills, and that actually now rewards different styles of play, which is cool.
That's cool. We're out of time on that one. What are we going to name it?
My first name is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. What if should we just call this thing Defrag or what?
Defrag is kind of fun, and especially if the character is evading a grenade on the cover.
Oh yeah,
one of the cyber police behind him.
It's a data grenade that they lob at you. If you get caught in it, it'll really mess up.
All right, that's our first pitch for today. Let's go to my pitch now. Similarly, I've got kind of a Tetris inspiration. So it's like Tetris without line clears. So players take turns stacking oddly shaped objects into space, and the player who's forced to go above a certain line or height loses. Basically, you want to force your opponent to exceed the, I don't know whether you're spilling over the side of a container or whether you are just kind of building a mountain of garbage, and then the one who reaches, this kind of line at the top loses. Maybe there's alternate scenarios where you don't want to be the one that topples the tower like Jenga, or you don't want to be the one or maybe you do want to be the one who reaches a certain height, but kind of a competitive, weird shape stacking game. Starting the clock.
So the mechanics are that I do want to stack up, but I don't want it to fall, or what was the line that I'm not supposed to cross?
In my original pitch, it's there's kind of a certain height, and you want your opponent to be the one that crosses that line, and so you want to do whatever you can to basically force. It's like the hands on the baseball bat, thing to determine who bats first. How they stack their hands and the person who's on top is either the winner or the loser. I don't know how that works, actually.
Got it. So maybe there's a mechanic where I can... Got it. It almost makes me think of that old arcade. There's a machine that you see in many arcades where you kind of like put a quarter in or something, and maybe it pushes other quarters over the edge. I'm thinking now that I would like strategically stack things to kind of force a section or an area of the pile to collapse or shift down, just so my last piece of trash doesn't end up above this line.
And I could think that, there could be maybe different modes, one that's kind of physics based. And so there is the possibility for tower collapse, and maybe some are more kind of Tetris-y, where you can stack, and you have all sorts of weird shaped blocks that are jutting off in different directions. And however they attach to the other blocks, like that's where they're permanently stuck. So, it's, and maybe you also have kind of like a hand of cards, of blocks, and you can choose which blocks to play and win. Some of them are very large and cumbersome. Some of them are very small and easy to fit into various slots. And so it's about juking your opponent into playing their most useful blocks early and kind of forcing them into unwinnable positions.
I don't know if this is kind of something that you were thinking about, but one of my favorite card games is Uno. Just the simplicity of it is so pure to me, and I do love, a 4+ player game of Uno where people are throwing down skips and draw twos and all that stuff. And I'm wondering if there's like a bit of a trash fire mechanic or like a controlled burn. Sometimes you see these in match 3 games of they'll burn like a few cells adjacent to them in either direction, almost Bomberman style. And if you could kind of convince someone to sort of use those resources earlier and take away their ability to kind of control it later on in the match.
Yeah. Some of these blocks that are in your hand might have these kind of interesting effects that could throw the match in one way or another. And maybe you don't have visibility into what your opponent has. Maybe for online matches, maybe, couch matches, you would have that visibility, and maybe the rules would be kind of slightly tweaked to accommodate that.
Yeah, and then the mind game begins, right? How do I get them to use this thing? What else? I'm thinking about the mechanic of not crossing the line, and I'm wondering if there's any sort of world events or something that could happen to the board that, like an earthquake coming down and forcing trash to sort of settle or fill gaps. Or I'm wondering if I stack these blocks in such a way that there is a gap, like Tetris style, I wonder if stacking enough trash on top of that eventually forces a compression mechanic or something where previous blocks get like halved under enough weight of a certain type.
Yeah, we've talked about a game called Trash Panic, I think it was, on PS3, which is a kind of a block stacking puzzle game, single player though in this case, where you're basically trying to fill up a trash can with all sorts of different kind of garbage that it sends your way, and weight and density and stuff like that was factored into it, in that, if you have a large heavy item, then you can, do a quick drop to crush things beneath it. And that was one of the kind of core strategies that you would use to try to compact the garbage you were working with. But if you miscalculated, if the item wasn't as heavy as you thought it was, or not heavy enough to break the object, or, maybe it wasn't dropped from high enough, then, you were kind of stuck in a position where maybe the stuff underneath that you were hoping would break didn't break. And now your large piece of garbage is stuck at a bad angle and is kind of blocking a large portion of the trash can that you needed to, to fill up efficiently.
Is there something like this? And I feel like this is something that Jenga doesn't attempt to do, but maybe could in some ways. There's that occurrence of like some board games have spun off speed versions of themselves. And I'm wondering if there's a bit of a shot clock mechanic so that somebody maybe makes a hastier decision than they would otherwise.
That's fun. You could do like almost like a game of horse. Like each turn has to be as short or shorter than the previous turn.
Oh.
And then it resets every time somebody takes longer, and then there's some sort of a penalty.
I'm just realizing I sent you this text message of a walnut. So you can ignore that. That was for my wife. We were talking about walnuts today. And how weird they look. The idea of the shot clock or having to speed up and something like that is, I think, something that would be interesting is like, you know, that Mario butt stomp sort of feeling of, I know we've pitched a game about that before, but like the ability to force compression in an area or to place something that otherwise maybe the material of your blocks is not exposed. Maybe it's all silhouetted out, and instead, like, you know the material, you know the player's material, but you kind of have to discover what the material is. It's almost like Stratego or something. You can't really tell what the piece is until, you know, you kind of come up against it. Yeah, once you see a player like play something that would otherwise be over the line, and then it compresses a bunch of blocks, you're like, oh, that must be steel, and there's only, you know, 3 steel blocks in any given deck or something like that.
It's interesting as well. So it's not always playing with kind of the full set of information. Maybe there's also blocks that you can kind of like manipulate in ways. Like if we were thinking about a game like Mount Your Friends, where these are kind of people that are climbing up, and then the pose that you kind of lock them into at the end when you end your move is the pose that they are kind of stuck within. But, you know, they're on their way up before they turn into essentially just like a solid part of the mountain. They are people with arms and legs that can move all about. And so, you know, they have a certain amount of flexibility to reshape the mountain before they become kind of a solidified part of it.
So I have the ability to alter it before it gets locked in, potentially?
Yeah, maybe.
So Magic the Gathering does have this mechanic of a certain type of card called an instant can be cast on at any point, my turn or the opponent's turn. And so having like that mechanic in this, maybe there's kind of, while somebody's taking their turn and they're, you know, able to place 3 blocks or something like that very methodically in between blocks 1 and 2, you come in with your sort of instant block and, you know, either fill up a gap that you knew that they were planning on taking advantage of and leaving them with no other options or something like that. So if you save your instances until late, you can kind of ensure that you are the last hand on the bat, if you will.
Let's go ahead and stop that one there, and let's give it a name.
My God, I feel like I'm bringing the wrong energy to this episode, but boy, oh boy, Trash Fire is...
Trash Fire is kind of fun. That one, I think, brings a very positive and very competitive energy to it.
If we come up with a trifecta of crazy names like this episode, Trash Fire and Defrag are going to be two very... This is going to be a good episode title.
Let's go over to our community. We have a pitch from the always reliable Mike Esguerra, who says, quick pitch, a Star Wars VR game where you play a blind Jedi who sees through the Force. All right, starting the clock. This is cool. There should be more VR games about being blind, you know? Like you're in a sensory deprivation chamber, essentially, for your eyes exclusively.
Right.
You know, you have this big dark band around your face. Like, obviously, you know, it would feel like it might be kind of under-delivering its core selling point, but why not? Why not experiment with it? You know, like what could we do? Because obviously we can't give the player that many sensations. We have vibration in controllers, we have the sound, but we'd probably have to represent this visually somehow. But like, what could we do to emulate seeing through the Force?
I mean, first out the gate, one of the things that I was surprised by when I had first tried an Oculus was not just the sort of what I was seeing, but what I was hearing. Like, it felt like the first time directional audio really meant something because it was actually connected to my head movements rather than,
Yeah.
navigating a camera around. And so I definitely think sound is a big part of this game. And I know I'm a Jedi. Maybe there's something, the Star Wars equivalent of the walking stick, right? But the idea that you can kind of tap, 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 tap and feel different vibrations and sensations, or heck, maybe it's even you're able to kind of deploy your lightsaber. And when you deploy your lightsaber, it is of a light and a frequency that can kind of burn through and still make it into your vision. So the lightsaber is a way you can kind of detect when it's being obscured by something, but you want to be very careful, right? You don't want to potentially hurt anybody.
That is interesting, actually. When I think about a blind protagonist, like my mind goes to Avatar: The Last Airbender, Toph, the extremely
I've never seen that show. Is that character blind?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, but she's a terrific martial artist and a terrific earthbender. And it's interesting because she essentially sees through her bending. And so, as an earthbender, she walks around barefoot and can sense vibrations in the ground. And it's kind of depicted whenever they need to visually represent it within the show as, the world goes black and white. The, detail is stripped from the world, and you can see these kind of like rings radiating from her feet and detecting the people and the movement and the stuff around her. And so that would actually be a really interesting conceit, is maybe it's not Star Wars, maybe it's kind of like a kung fu monk type of setting, and you have like a walking stick or like a full-on bow staff or something in your hand that you can tap on the ground, and when you tap it, then you get like an echolocation little glimpse of the world around you, and then that is also your weapon that you can use to kind of bash people that are coming at you. So you have to kind of take this alternating rhythm of tapping it on a solid object in your environment to create these kind of echolocation waves so that you can actually see what's going on, and using it as a weapon to either bash enemies or solve puzzles, all through just kind of like movements you would make. Where you would be tapping would change depending on where you're standing in the environment, so it's all very reactive. It's all stuff you would have to really consider as you go.
That's interesting. And that kind of, the idea of blind combat, right? We've played Kenshi in Mortal Kombat as a canonically blind character, and but of course we're seeing, we're a total third party in that. We're seeing his whole body, we're seeing the opponent's whole body. Like, functionally the player is not blind, but having to rely on, and there's something Star Warsian in this, having to rely on sound and anticipation, and gosh, you could almost use like a force push or something as an echolocation type of thing. I know there was that game a couple years ago. It seemed like it was, we've referenced it before. It's kind of all black, but there is like sort of pulsing sounds in the environment that kind of light things up.
Would this be Scanner Sombre?
Potentially. I thought it was called something Sight. I'd have to look it up, but there's
a game called Beyond Eyes where you're playing a blind girl in a like all white environment, and she can see things around her based on the noise that they make.
That sounds, I think that sounds something like it. I think that one was more third person, right? There's like some color to it. This one I'm thinking is like kind of monotone, but yeah, either way, the idea of like some frequency, some spectrum is able to pierce your vision. And so what you have is an environment that you mostly can't see, but maybe it is just the bare minimum amount of non-specific information so that there is a way to get your bearings. Because I could see like just being totally blind in VR could actually make you quite sick, potentially. Mm-hmm. Something that kind of anchors you in the scene, but then everything else you have to infer from its relevant location, sound-wise or light obfuscation-wise to that
maybe
original
you can
emanation.
Detect, like life force in a way, and this would work either as kind of a Kung Fu Buddhist monk or as a Jedi Knight, where you get these kind of like hazy shapes of, and you can't tell yourself whether they are birds or animals or people or plant life. And so there is kind of a, rough, hazy outline of the environment to some extent, not enough to accurately navigate based on, and not enough to, get the information you need to properly fight somebody. But you can, if nothing else, you can use that sense to do some level of navigation and some level of like, just, positioning yourself in the world, and then kind of tapping your cane is your way of kind of really kind of restoring the detail that you need to do all the proper platforming and fighting.
I think that's getting to it. And what you just reminded me of is Obra Dinn, and the way that you end up like, you can't really make out the characters necessarily, so you're kind of going on voices, and maybe if these people are alive and in your environment, you can hear voices and mannerisms, or maybe just mannerisms or something like that. But like you would have some faculty to go from really cold, not understanding who's around you, what's going on, to knowing who each of those characters are, and in a combat scenario, right? Like maybe one of these enemies is really, really sort of deceitful, and so they put an innocent person in your way, and you have to, before you make your attack, really look at this person and be like, I just see something in the mannerisms or the height or the something that suggests it is not the person I'm looking for.
Yeah, I've always had a little bit of like nearsightedness, and it takes me a while to really recognize somebody's face if they're approaching from far away. And so especially in college where you're walking across large campuses with, large empty spaces with lots of people that you might potentially know, I learned to identify people by the way that they walk more than by, their faces, because you'd have to get pretty close to really be able to like recognize somebody substantially in that way. So I think that's interesting, like being able to recognize somebody based on the animations of movements rather than the kind of specificity of voice or face. That's all the time that we have on that one. On Mike Esguerra's idea, let's give it a name.
The game I was thinking about, by the way, I think it's called Perception.
Okay, I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, it looks like it was not successful. I mean, it's too bad we had like the Force Unleashed, because this is really the first Force game, at least in the true definition of what the Force is. It's this energy that surrounds us and binds us and all that sort of stuff.
It could be called Blind Rage, Blind Fury. Is that a term?
Blind Rage certainly is. Blind Fury, I think that was a game, wasn't it? I'm gonna Google it.
Could very well be. Doesn't sound familiar to me.
It's a 1989 American action film, so that's a good start. Oh my god! Okay, I'll have to just send you this graphic. I wish I could. The cover to this movie is a man smiling with a walking stick and many, many people who he seems to have disarmed with guns surrounding him. Blind Fury. I think Blind Fury sounds better than Blind Rage to me.
To be the official video game adaptation of the movie.
Well,
Our first video game adaptation without actually having seen the movie first.
I'll have to put this in the show post on the website, but I just dropped it in our Discord. Can you believe this cover?
I mean, also, See No Evil is kind of a fun, obviously that goes back to a famous Gene Wilder movie title as well, but...
Well, we just got Sifu, right? Announced at this Sony PlayStation thing, so maybe we have Sino is the name of the character.
Or this could be like Seefu, Sifu, like Kung Fu, blind Kung Fu.
Sifu.
Beat them by technicality of their copyright.
Boom. You just got sniped by Playwright.
It's pretty funny. Well, they have some good titles in there. Thank you, Mike Esguerra, for sending in another great video game pitch. taken it in different directions, but I hope you'll be pleased with how that ended up coming out. And if you would like to send in a video game pitch of your own, you can do so by going to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can tweet us at playwrightcast, or you can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. It's a wonderful thing to listen to, alongside wonderful shows on the Cane and Rinse network, like Cane and Rinse, like Sound of Play, like The Sausage Factory, and there's been a couple of good extras on there. There's a Why We Game article right now on Cane and Rinse, which does not slot into any of the podcasts, and certainly it's a great read, and it doesn't take an hour to read. It's just like many of the shows take.
Well, certainly we have lots of written stuff on the website as well. The website is worth checking out. If you only know Cane and Rinse for the podcasting. Before we move into our final feature, I guess it's probably time to bring up this topic just so that people have enough time to think about video game pitches that they want to send in before. Well, I guess we should just say, we've been doing this show for, what has it been? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, nearly 4 years. Yeah, something like that.
Nearly 4 years now. And at our fourth year, we will not be necessarily shutting the show down, but kind of ceasing from the weekly cadence. It's not a topical show, and so, it's not something that refreshes with the news every week. It's a show that is just kind of an outpouring of creativity and storytelling and stuff like that. And so, I think we got to a point where we still, obviously enjoy doing this, but, there might be kind of maybe diminishing returns in the utility of producing hundreds more of these, whereas even we who have recorded and edited all of these very often forget our early pitches and would be just as surprised as new listeners to go back to the early episodes and listen to them now. And
Which is very strange to think about.
Yeah, in that sense, it feels like people who are just getting into it, there's no reason necessarily why they would have to follow each week's new release versus diving into the back catalog. And kind of be that the case, it feels like the back catalog really kind of speaks for itself and can support itself at this point. So,
I mean, you and I talked about it, and that feeling, which is an incredible feeling because I've only in my past done more topical based shows, and that idea of, episode 1, episode 5, and episode, 200 all contain something unique and something original and something that has value then, now, and in the future is kind of wild when we really thought about it, and also something that we felt confident saying, hey, this are we the snake eating its own tail at some point as we return to old ideas. And I don't know, what will the new schedule look like, but I think we both are kind of in agreement of it's some combination of everybody, hey, you're still welcome to, as we start winding down regular episodes, please still write in. If we get a big backlog of stuff, we'll spring up and do an episode and just talk about listener pitches, or as I'm sure, new games are announced all the time and we might be struck, and maybe we come back and just do, one pitch and it's a short episode and we're out or something like that. But I think that there's room for the show to sustain. And then there's also, I think, it is still a complete thought, even if if we don't pursue it in a regular basis.
Yeah. So, stay subscribed to the feed. We'll probably hop on maybe once every couple months or something to record something new, just because we had kind of an influx of new ideas and we want a place to share them or to work them out. And so, it's just, you'll definitely hear from us again. but it just wouldn't be kind of under the regular release schedule. And anyone who subscribed to this during the run of the show, we'd encourage you to, if you're missing the weekly releases, just go back to episode 1, start listening there. You might even lap yourself and find that the episode that you started on is now like listening to it again with fresh ears. I think, we're very proud of the work that we've done here. We're not doing this because it's become unfun or because we've run out of ideas. Honestly, that probably happened around episode 15. But no, we've had a tremendous time doing this. We've really, really enjoyed all of the community correspondence. If we receive a large amount of community correspondence between now and mid-June, which is when we would be kind of wrapping this all up around the 4th anniversary of the show, then, maybe the last show can be like an extra long all listener pitches special. We can blitz through everything that we have left in our inbox. Maybe,
Dare we tempt fate and have people do audio? Send in your audio pitches.
Hey, whatever you want to send in, we will find a way to incorporate into the show somehow. And then even after the show kind of, closes its doors a little bit, feel free to keep sending stuff in.
Maybe it becomes a Clubhouse show in the future, H. Who knows what's happening?
It's not that the Playwright game is ending. It's just that we'll be kind of turning a new leaf in mid-June. We'll talk about it more as we get closer to it. But for now, we just want to kind of put that on the radar that the show is going to be kind of changing course, changing form, not going away. We'll probably upload the episodes to YouTube for easier listening. And, we'll find ways to continue to make Playwright fresh going forward. But for now, I think we've done a good job. We're very happy with the show that we've created, and we've got another 3 months or so to punch out the reliable episodes that that we've been doing over the past almost 4 years, almost without missing a week. We've been very reliable. We've created a huge number of podcasts over that time, and
do you think really in our last episode when Bob Newhart wakes up and realizes he's been on the other show the whole time that fans will finally see the connective universe and how we're technically part of the MCU, we're technically part of all of these sorts of large franchises, and people just haven't known it the whole time?
Well, that's our goal. We have to get Chris Evans on. If anyone knows him and can drop him an email.
Well, he's a listener for sure, so...
Anyways, with that said, let's not go out with heavy hearts if that's what people are feeling, or maybe it's elation that they'll have room for another podcast in their lives again. I'm a habitual listener, and I know that there are certain things that I have to listen to all the way to the end, even though there is other stuff that I want to spend my time engaging with. But anyways, let's go out with a redacted game. I believe that it is your turn to try and stump me.
Here we go. Redacted has kidnapped the Redacted. Can Redacted rescue his friends, reclaim the Redacted, and save his homeland from certain doom? Take out some Redacted with Redacted's Redacted. Sorry, you're signing up for a lot of these. With Redacted's Redacted launcher or Redacted's Redacted. Float through the air using Redacted's Redacted, even rocket to the sky with Redacted's Redacted.
Okay. The first half of this sounded a lot like one of those classic beat 'em ups, like a Double Dragon or a Streets of Rage or a...
It's kind of shocking how many video game storylines hinge on a kidnapping.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I mean, even Mario games are about kidnappings. So it sounds like there are multiple characters, each with different abilities, and it sounds like a certain kind of mobility around the levels are some of the big selling points of this multi-character game.
I mean, I'm not going to throw you too much, but nobody ever said the word levels.
Okay, well, Fair enough. Some sort of a game space anyways.
Yes.
Sorry to do this twice in a row here, but like, could I have you read the description again?
Let me pull up the redacted version or else I'm going to slip.
I'll see if you're lying or telling the truth.
Redacted has kidnapped the Redacted. Can Redacted rescue his friends, reclaim the Redacted, and save his homeland from certain doom? Take out some Redacted with Redacted's Redacted launcher, or Redacted's Redacted. Float through the air using Redacted's Redacted, even rocket to the sky with Redacted's Redacted. Lots of exclamation points in this.
All right, first guess. Is this a Ninja Turtles game?
This is not a Ninja Turtles game.
Fair enough. That would have been a pretty solid first guess.
It would have been, yeah.
All right. What kind of metadata can I have on this?
I feel like, and this is even a hint of itself, I feel like if I said the platform, it would give it away. But It is the number 3 best game of its platform of 1999. The number 2 most discussed game of its platform of 1999. And the number 1 most shared game of its platform of 1999.
Man, it's very interesting. It is two or 3 years too late to be Banjo-Kazooie, which I feel like all of those verbs could fit pretty well. 1999 was the year of...
Isn't that interesting? Just what you just said, isn't that interesting, is all I can think.
Okay, so 1999 was the year of the Nintendo 64. The Dreamcast was brand new at this time. PlayStation 1 was still going strong, not quite the era of the PlayStation 2 just yet, I believe. I think that was still a year or two off. All right.
But we're in early 3D-ish territory for sure.
Okay, multi-character with different abilities about traversing, I'm going to presume, 3-dimensional spaces. Let's see. Would this be the type of game, and again, I'm sorry to throw out these kind of like genre types of things, but would this theoretically be the type of game that would encourage the player to put their hands together if they want to clap?
Would this be the type... Are you saying is clapping a mechanic in the game?
I mean, would it very explicitly tell you to, if you want to clap, along with some sort of a song, then you would want to put your hands together, theoretically.
I would say that clappable music is definitely part of its oeuvre.
All right. Boy, this really opens it up.
You son of a bee.
Would any of the characters have be described as maybe inflating themselves like some sort of inflatable? I can't really think of a great example, but maybe like a balloon.
Oh, I don't. I genuinely don't know.
It would be just like a balloon, if anything.
I genuinely don't know.
Okay.
The worst.
Then would this be the 64th entry in the long-running Donkey Kong series?
This would be... Yes. Well, technically they skipped a couple, but...
They did skip a few, yeah. But we have to rely upon the intention of the artists when it comes to the numerology of their series.
Yeah. And I think there was some confusion because the original Donkey Kong did come out in 1964, so they had to put Donkey Kong 64 and then in parentheses 1999.
That's my thing. Whenever we get to 2064 to see what the Madden series does, if they're still naming it after a long dead man at that point.
Yeah, that would be a faded from memory. All right, well, obviously Donkey Kong 64, well done. At least let me take this time to say K. Rool has kidnapped the Kongs. Can Donkey Kong rescue his friends, reclaim the golden bananas, and save his homeland from certain doom? Take out some Kremlings with Chunky's pineapple launcher or Lanky's trombone. Float through the air using Tiny's ponytail twirl, even rocket to the sky with Diddy's jet barrel. But yeah, you said Banjo-Kazooie. I was like, well, we've got check mark for rare, check mark for the era and the style of game. Who turned into a balloon in this game?
That was Lanky Kong could inflate himself just like a balloon.
God.
And,
I have absolutely no memories of Donkey Kong 64.
Crazy Kong in particular really digs the tune.
And you know what? I need to stop employing this strategy before the show ends, because if I keep doing things that I know you would be embarrassed to get wrong, then you're going to keep getting them right.
Could be. I mean, you might get the ultimate stumper one of these days.
Yes, that's my dream.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you again next week.
Bye.